entanglement in fruitive activities. From the beginning of the chapter, just a little review. Kapila Deva is explaining to Devahuti a distinction, compare and contrast kind of distinction between living entities involved in matter that are attached to matter and misidentification with matter and attachment to fruitive activities trying to enjoy in that realm. And then the contrast is living entities that are involved in matter and are detached from matter, seeing to their necessities according to the codes of Dharma, performing their duties, in other words, at the same time inwardly cultivating attachment to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the first 4 verses was describing the first group, specifically in the human form of life, who are attached to fruitive activities and what their life is like and what the entanglement of such a life is like, continuing birth after birth. And then starting with verses 5 and 6, which we discussed yesterday. This is the contrast. This is the grihasta, situated in the material energy, the soul, part and parcel of the Supreme Soul, detached. And we heard some of the elements. They're guided by spiritual intelligence. Normally, we're accustomed to hearing from Bhagavad Gita that's called buddhi. Dadami buddhi yogam tam. Krishna gives the intelligence, yenamam upayanti te, by which one can come to him. That's spiritual intelligence. Here, this verse, the Sanskrit word is dhira. We discussed that. What does dhira mean? Spiritual, guided by spiritual intelligence. Another feature of the grihasta is purified consciousness, shuddha cetasa, purified consciousness. It's satisfied in that purified consciousness or Krishna consciousness. That since when a symptom that one is satisfied within by Krishna consciousness is one doesn't look for happiness outside. There's activity outside, but it's not with the spirit of, I want to be the enjoyer of the activity outside. The fruitive activity spirit is dissolved by bhakti. That's the point. Freed from the modes of material nature. We discussed this. That's the liberated position. So one can act from the liberated position even in the material world. In the material world we have a gross physical body and a subtle body. Also physical, subtle body, gross body. And matter, we know, material nature is moved by the modes of nature. Mode of goodness, passion, ignorance, and mix. So the mode of goodness mode is described in the verse. They are situated in their own occupational duties, acting as one is expected to act. That is, so dutifully. Duty, according to the codes of Dharma, is the mode of goodness. And it leads to purification. It diminishes the influence of passion and ignorance. One just continues because it is to be done. And it is to be done because it leads to purification. It leads to getting closer to Krishna. That's really the real standard of purification. So that's the verse 5. That's the grihasta, involved with matter but not attached to it. And then 6, by executing one's occupational duties, acting with detachment and without a sense of proprietorship or false egoism, one is posted in one's constitutional position by dint of complete purification of consciousness, and by thus executing so-called material duties, he can easily enter into the kingdom of God. So it's a life of preparing oneself to go back to Godhead. This is sadhana, and it's even, there's a element of karma yoga as opposed to the element of bhakti. It's karma yoga is detached work. Just following the line of Bhagavad Gita, but expanding Bhagavad Gita's message, detached work. For what purpose? For cultivation of bhakti. That detached work, karma yoga, has a core, like the soul animates the body, bhakti animates karma yoga. It's really the essence and the purpose of karma yoga, or detached work, offering the fruits to the Supreme. It's awakening attachment and love and devotion and the spirit of wishing to be in Krishna's service. I could say that's been a theme throughout, going back to chapter 25 through 32. There's different elements in this exhaustive presentation by Kapila Dev. There's a Sankhya element, there's a meditation element, there's a work element, there's a devotion element. That's all part of Sankhya. We say Sankhya philosophy. Kapila Dev is the instructor of Sankhya philosophy. This is Satya Yuga. And in Satya Yuga, the process of achieving spiritual perfection is what? Dhyayate, meditation. So there's a meditation element. So rather than reciting the list again, there's several elements. All of those elements have one purpose driving them, just like the soul animates the body. And that one element that's driving all of them in Satya Yuga, the process for achieving perfection, is devotion. And devotion means wishing to be in service, not just a feeling. It's wishing to be in service, aspiring for that position of shelter in Krishna's service. And then one can be protected from and detached from all things. Say the opposite. If one is not absorbed in devotion, wishing to be in service to the Supreme, one is going to be affected, pushed and pulled and moved around by the material energy. And it sometimes makes you sick, like an amusement park or something. Get in the ride and whoa, and you vomit because it's so yucky, so much disturbing to the system. So that's the grihastha position, who by being so situated can easily enter the kingdom of God. So that's what we've covered so far. Now this morning's verse, interesting verse. Surya Dvarena. What does Surya mean? Sun, right? And Dvara, or Dvarena, Dvara, path or doorway. That's the language that Rishabdev speaks to his sons. There's the gateway or doorway or an entrance into the position of transcendence. And that entrance into the position of transcendence is through association of sadhus. Dvaram. Dvaram ahor vimuktes. Dvaram ahor vimuktes. The gateway to liberation is association with saintly people. That's Rishabdev's teachings. So here is Surya Dvarena. Surya Dvarena. So the path of the sun. Or in the word for it is the path of liberation. Excuse me, the path of illumination. So the translation, through the path of illumination, such liberated persons approach the complete personality of Godhead, who is the proprietor of the material and spiritual worlds and is the supreme cause of their manifestation and dissolution. Surya Dvarena. So, you're all familiar with Bhagavad Gita. And in Bhagavad Gita, where is there mention? Who can describe? There's some mention of following the path of the sun. What does it say about that in 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita? Oh, Bhagavad Gita scholars, or students at least. What is said in Bhagavad Gita about the path of the sun?
Something about Dakshina and
Huh?
sun moving 6 months in the...
Yeah. What does it say about in the Bhagavad Gita? What does it say about those who follow, who leave their body as the sun moves in the northerly direction?
Go to the heavenly planet.
Go to the heavenly planets. So it's and also the position of the sun in cosmology is very important. The position of the sun in transcendence is important. Let's hear what Prabhupada writes in the purport. The word Surya Dvarena means, quote, by the illuminated path, unquote, or through the sun planet. Now, remember, this is speaking about going back to Godhead. That group, the Grihastas, who are situated properly in their prescribed duties and who are absorbed in devotion to the Supreme. They go back to Godhead. They're constitutionally situated properly in this life, and after this life they go back to Godhead. That was yesterday's verse. And now here's they're going back to Godhead. Zoom, there they go. And they're following the path of illumination to get there. Surya Dvarena. The illuminated path is devotional service. Subtle. The path of the sun, or the path of illumination, is being equated to devotional service. But it's not demigod worship. It's not Satrajit, who is the worshipper of the sun. And those who are Brahmanas, they're knowers of Brahman, they chant Gayatri Mantra, which some people think is worship of the sun. Some people think it's worship of the impersonal Brahman. And Vaishnavas very clearly understand, no, it's worship of the Supreme Personality of God. That's what devotional service is. Continuing. It is advised in the Vedas not to pass through the darkness, but to pass through, doesn't say illumination, through the sun planet. What's going on? Is this devotional service or is this demigod worship of the sun god, where you worship the sun planet? And some people, some devotees included, do yoga. And one of the standard yoga practices is Surya Namaskar, right? Some of you know that one. So, Does that mean we're namaskar, we're offering our obeisances to the sun? Well, some people think that's what you're doing. This verse is focusing on, no, it's devotional service, worship of, the path is the sun, or the sun trajectory, or the sun planet. It is also recommended here that by traversing the illuminated path, one can be freed from the contamination of the material modes of nature. A question. This is discussed by Jiva Goswami in a commentary that he writes in relation to Gayatri towards the very end, in the 12th canto, Bhagavatam. There's some description of the sun, and the sun is, those that are familiar with Gayatri mantra, the sun is described as being transcendental. The rays of the sun are transcendental. So the sun isn't transcendental. It comes into existence and it goes out of existence. It is not transcendental, nor are its rays transcendental. It's temporary. It's powerful. We know from Brahma Samhita, the rays of the sun are power of the sun god, which is derived from the transcendental Govinda. So the sun is his representative, and who he is representing is the sun, is the Supreme Lord. So Gayatri is not worship of the sun. The Gayatri mantra is not worship of the sun, because we know Gayatri mantra, it is said, Gayatri mantra is the mother of all other mantras. She's the mama, and all the other mantras are her babies. They come from her. So Gayatri is a very important mantra, and it is the essence of the Vedas, because mantras are expressing essences. So the essence of the Vedas is worship of the sun, or the essence of the Vedas is worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For Vaishnavas, it's really easy. It's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the Vedas, and that's the Gayatri mantra. And that's what's being spoken of here also. The path of the sun, Surya Dvarena. One can enter into the kingdom where the completely perfect personality of Godhead resides by following that path. Continuing, the words Purusham Vishvato Mukham means the Supreme Personality of Godhead who is all perfect. Now, in the word for word, Purusham Vishvato Mukham, Mukha means face, face. And Vishvata, Vishva, universe. Vishvato Mukham means whose face is turned everywhere. So that might be the universal form, yet it is described in the 11th canto as faces everywhere. It can also mean the Paramatma feature, who is everywhere and his face is everywhere. It's the Supreme Lord, Vishvato Mukham. Purusham Vishvato Mukham. Supreme Lord whose face is everywhere. So who's being worshipped? That Supreme Personality Godhead, who's situated in the heart and is the source of the entire cosmic manifestation. Therefore it is he whose face is turned everywhere. All living entities other than the Supreme Personality Godhead are very small. Although they may be big by our calculation, everyone is infinitesimal. And therefore, in the Vedas, the Supreme Lord is called the Supreme Eternal amongst all eternals. Who knows the Sanskrit? Nityo nityanam chaitanas chaitananam eko bhuvanam yo vididati kama. Prabhupada referred to that over and over. So amongst all eternals, he's the supreme. Nityo nityanam. Nityanam is plural, and nitya is singular. Amongst eternals, he's the supreme eternal. Living entities, they're eternal. Krishna is the supreme eternal. He's the shelter of all eternals and of all temporaries. He's the shelter of everything. He is the proprietor of the material and spiritual worlds and the supreme cause of manifestation. Then he's going to expand on, he is the supreme cause of manifestation. So listen to this. Material nature is only the ingredient, because actually the manifestation is caused by his energy. The material energy is also his energy, just as the combination of father and mother is the cause of childbirth, so the combination of the material energy and the glance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of the manifestation of the material world. The efficient cause, therefore, is not matter, but the Lord himself. Now, this is the simplified version. What's an expanded version of what's in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is the seed-giving father of all living entities, and the seed is given to Prakriti. So that's the father and the mother. Here it's said this way, and more technical language you can read in Chaitanya Charitamrita. That's our postgraduate study. And it has all these technical terms about efficient cause and material cause. And then the material cause has two divisions, Nimitta Maya and Upadan Maya. And then there's the original cause, the efficient cause. In other words, material nature produces life, just as wombs of mothers produce life. But wombs of mothers don't produce life without a father. And fathers don't produce life without the womb of the mother. So that the combination is needed. But of the two, in Sanskrit language or in the Vedic way of analyzing, there's an efficient cause. Then there's the material cause. The two divisions, material cause provides ingredients and provides the chamber in which life is generated. So for atheists, if you read Bhagavad Gita carefully, you'll find Krishna is explaining the atheistic view. It's in the Divine and Demoniac chapter. In the atheistic view, like these nice young devotees are going to school and they learn atheistic view. You're just hearing Amrit giving a little narrative of the Big Bang subject that he has to learn in school. And the Big Bang is material nature goes kaboom. And then comes planets and life and stuff. There's no efficient cause using this language. There's no God. It's just material nature goes kaboom. And there's Big Bang. And then some time passes, and by chance, some combination of particles of matter get together and form life. And then we have evolutionary theory combined with Big Bang, and it's compulsory in the education system in America. You all pay taxes because you're obliged to pay taxes to ensure that all the students, all the young people in the United States get trained in atheism. And meanwhile, we're trying to counter that by training in theism. And it, for some it's an uphill struggle. For some it's not. But there has to be some kind of inoculation. When you go into an epidemic area, a physician will go into the epidemic area, but he takes an inoculation. He knows there is lethal. I could contract the disease and die. So there's some precaution. So devotee families take some precaution and be sufficiently clear in, I call it, training our devotee children. Of course, it can happen with adults. You bring some people into a Bhakti Vriksha group and they've been trained in atheism. And then when it comes to theism notions of things, you know, they either express it or they don't express it, but you know, their mind is troubled because it's a contradiction to everything that, you know, we've been spoon-fed since we're little. It's atheism. Compulsory education, atheism. I have an issue about this, as you can tell. And step out of line if you're an educator, you lose your job. If you want to be an author of textbooks, forget it. That says, here's an option besides atheism. You'll not get support from the public education system. And they've got, it's like checkmate. Separation of church and state. You can't bring that into the education system. Certainly you can't call it science. Then there's science, and then there's, over there's sentimentality. Poo-poo on sentimentality. You can put it in the sentimentality area. You can't put it in the science area, because that's where you know things. Science. And here's the doctrine of science, called, in small letters, atheism. And in big letters, it's evolution and Big Bang. And we don't allow anything else in our textbooks, because that's science. And it's compulsory for everybody. Unless you do homeschooling or some other thing, then you take those exams and you can say, you regurgitate back what you're supposed to regurgitate back, although you know differently. Not a friendly atmosphere for spiritual education. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time, and we're done, a little bit of time on sun worship, or that's supposed sun worship found in the Vedas, or specifically found in Gayatri Mantra. So some of you, at least the adults, because it's, in India, it's common that people sing Gayatri, although it's not supposed to be recited that way. So, Savator Varenyam, Bhargo Devasya. This is what Jiva Goswami. Bhargo is the effulgence. Devasya, transcendental. And Savator Varenyam, worshipable. Varenyam. The Bhagavatam teaches us, Bhagavad Gita teaches us, that devotion is meant for the personality of Godhead. We respect others, and we engage in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Savator Varenyam indicates the personality of God. And here's some references taken from three main sources, some sections of the Bhagavatam, from Brahma Samhita, and from Tattva Sandarbha. So start with this, from the 5th canto, chapter 23. 5th canto is the structure of the universe, this section. cosmology. So in this section, Canto 5, Chapter 23, Prabhupada is explaining in one of his purports the distinction between the demigods, he calls it ordinary demigods, and the sun god, who is an extraordinary demigod. And the distinction is the divinity of the sun god in comparison to the other demigods who are jivas that are empowered to be in charge of something, wind, rain, and so forth. Sun god is in a category by himself. Here's what Prabhupada writes. It is also significant that the predominating deities of even the greatest planets have been offered their exalted posts because of the very valuable pious activities they performed in previous births. A jiva can take that post. This is indicated herein by the word karma, nirmita, gataya. For example, as we have previously discussed, the moon is called jiva, which means that he is a living entity like us, but because of his pious activities, he's been appointed to his post as the moon god. Similarly, all the demigods are living entities who have been appointed to the various posts as managers of the moon, the earth, Venus, and so on because of their great service and pious acts. Only the predominating deity of the sun, Surya Narayana, is an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I'll tell you where the train is going. The train is going is to say the object of Gayatri, or this Surya Narayan, is a Shaktivesh avatar. But speaking of him as an incarnation, but the particular kind of incarnation you'll hear as this description goes on, is a Shaktivesh avatar. So what's the difference between a Shaktivesh avatar and a demigod? The demigod receives specific powers, and a Shaktivesh avatar is powers of the Supreme Lord directly. What does that mean? In chapter 10 of Bhagavad Gita, Opulence of the Absolute, the Sanskrit term is Vibhuti Yoga. Vibhuti means something of this world that's great. I have mountains, I have the Himalayas, I have fishes, I am shark. You know, something, I'm the greatest. Like Muhammad Ali. I'm the greatest. So the greatest is a vibhuti in this world, the material opulence. Vibhutis are distinct from bhagas, as in Bhagavan. They both mean opulence, but there's a different category. This is a spiritual opulence and this is a material opulence. So being able to control the wind, that's a material opulence. It's not worshipable Supreme Lord. But a Shaktivesh avatar is directly the spiritual potency of the Supreme Lord, being invested either in a Vishnu Tattva, more commonly in a Jiva Tattva. An example of the Vishnu Tattva is Anantashesh. He's Vishnu Tattva. But he's a Shaktivesh avatar. But otherwise, the Shaktivesh avatars include Narada Muni, who is bearing the Lord's Bhakti Shakti, or the four Kumaras, who are bearing the Lord's Jnana Shakti, Brahma, who's bearing the Lord's Shrishti Shakti, the potency for creation, and so forth. Surya Narayan is, at least it appears, there's perhaps other ways to understand, but it appears that he's an empowered incarnation. We'll hear. So now, the next reference is from Canto 3, same, Canto 3, but it's before, it's chapter 22. It's description of creation by Lord Brahma, the sub-creation by Lord Brahma, chapter 22. And involved in this is similar, like the creation of the sun and the sun god, what Lord Brahma does, sub-creation. The sun god, this is purport, excuse me, that's chapter summary. The sun god, who controls the affairs of the entire universe, especially in regard to heat, light, seasonal changes, and so on, is considered an expansion of Narayana. He represents the Vedas, and therefore he is known as Trayi Maya, the form of Lord Narayana. Sometimes the sun god is also called Surya Narayana. The sun god controls the 6 seasonal changes. Here we have 4, but in India it's 6. And causes winter, summer, rain, and so on. Yogis and karmis following the Varnashram institution who practice Hatha or Ashtanga Yoga, or who perform Agnihotra sacrifices, worship Surya Narayana for their own benefit. The demigod, Surya, is always in touch with the Supreme Personality, Godhead. It's kind of like Prabhupada does this very adroitly, sometimes and sometimes. And it's like it's the same thing. Sometimes over here, sometimes over there. And we're just supposed to watch how he does it. So is Surya Narayan, Vishnu Tattva, or is he a jiva in close touch with Vishnu Tattva? Or is he an empowered jiva? Or some kind of combination of those? Here's a reference from Canto 4, chapter 24, where Prabhupada is writing in his commentary, commenting on Vira Raghava Acharya. He's an Acharya from the Sri Sampradaya. This means this is the Sri Sampradaya's perspective on Surya Narayan. The demigod Surya, who is categorized as a very powerful jiva, or a living entity, is a representation of one of the parts of his body, the Supreme Lord's body. Although the worship of the sun god is recommended in this mantra, it's not Gayatri mantra, but it's a similar mantra recommending worship of the sun god, he is worshipped not as the Supreme Personality Godhead, but as his powerful representative. Canto 4. The plot thickens. So it sounds like Shakti Vaishavatar. That's Surya Narayan. So there's the sun god who's, and within the sun planet, or the worshipable deity of the sun god, is Surya Narayan. Sometimes the sun is called Surya Narayan. More commonly, the worshipable deity of within the sun planet is Surya Narayan. The sun god worships Surya Narayan. Just like in Srimad Bhagavatam, Gopakumar goes to Indraloka. And when he goes to Indraloka, what does he see? He sees the presiding deity of Indraloka, that's Indra, worshipping Vamana. That's his younger brother. But he's an incarnation of the Supreme Lord, right? Vamana. And then after some time, Indra, the worship is finished, Vamana retires, and Indra's done with his worship. So Indra is the presiding person of Indraloka, but he's worshipping Vamana, the presiding deity of Indra, his Ishtadeva. So similarly, that little description is the sun god is a jiva, and he's worshipping the presiding deity of the sun, Surya Narayan. There's Surya and there's Surya Narayan. At least that description. There may be different situations, but that's one description. Now, one more, and that is, again from the 5th canto. This is in relation to Bharat Maharaj. Bharat Maharaj was a king, son of Rishabdev, and he was instructed by Rishabdev in bhakti. So when Bharat Maharaj relinquished his kingdom and went to the forest to achieve spiritual perfection, it was through bhakti. And what did he do? He chanted the Gayatri mantra from the Rig Veda, the same Gayatri mantra that we're familiar with. Then Prabhupada writes in the commentary, the predominating deity within the sun is Hiranmaya, comma, Lord Narayana, period. He is worshipped by the Gayatri mantra. Further, he is also worshipped by other hymns mentioned in the Rig Veda. The mother has babies. So there's other mantras that are also worshipping Surya Narayan. But who is that Surya Narayan? Is it a jiva? Is it the sun? Or is it the presiding deity of the sun? Within the sun, Lord Narayana is situated, and he has a golden hue. Hiranmaya. By the way, the next verse after this one, which you can read on your own, speaks of Hiranmaya. Okay, so what do we conclude from all of this? There are different things said in different places, but it appears, emerging from all of this, that Surya Narayan is a Shaktivesh avatar, whose worship is equivalent to a Vishnu type of worship because he's a Shaktivesh avatar, although he's an empowered jiva. It's bhakti to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's what Gayatri Mantra is indicating. That's what this is indicating. The symmetry is perfect. From all of what Kapila Deva is teaching, he's not teaching go worship a jiva. You worship this personality of Godhead to go back to Godhead. So the path of the sun, or the Surya Dvarena, is worship of the personality of Godhead. And what feature of that is, at least one perspective, is Shaktivesh avatar, Surya Narayan. So one of these references, that's this reference to Bharat Maharaj, it speaks of, Prabhupada writes of Narayana within the sun, which sounds like there's two. There's the sun god, and there's Narayana, who is the worshipable deity of the sun god. Very similar to Indra worshipping Vamana. His place of residence, he has more than one, actually. One of them is at the lower region of this universe, where he's protecting Bali, who's presiding down there. He's at the gate, protecting Bali. And another is this position of being in the presiding deity of Indraloka. So the picture's not crystal clear, black and white, real sharp image. It's a little, you could say, it's open for interpretation in different ways. But very clearly, the worshipable deity, this Surya Dvarena, is indicating the personality of Godhead not that we're being encouraged by the Bhagavatam to be sun worshippers, and you follow the sun worship, and you go back to Godhead. Yatava Tatapat. Not that one. All paths lead to the same place. That's not the teaching. And then the next verse speaks more about this Hiranmaya. So it's important, just like the discussion yesterday about decision making. Some of you were here for that. It's real easy to take isolated reference and say, that's it. And then you have a discussion with your friend, they say, yeah, that's it. Then there's some other people that say, well, there's this reference and it says that. So that's it. No, this is it. No, that's it. So it's important to take, when you want to understand something properly, there's the big panorama, the big picture. It's very clear to understand the intention of the Bhagavatam by understanding the meditation of Srila Vyasadeva. And he followed the instruction of Narada, sit in trance, and that which you realize in trance, let that be the essence of this literature that's the essence of all the Vedas. Bhagavatam. And what did he see? He didn't see, worship of the sun. Worship of the personality of Godhead. So we must derive that understanding from this, although the language may sound otherwise. The path of the sun, and specifically even the sun planet. It's Surya Narayan, it's the personality of Godhead. And he illuminates, that's the path of illumination, as opposed to the path of darkness. Darkness means forgetfulness or ignorance of ignoring the source of everything. From that original ignorance comes all the other ignorances. And the cure of that ignorance is knowledge, or illumination, or turning one's attention again to the personality of Godhead. That's what's being recommended, to go back to Godhead by Lord Kapila Deva. Maybe I maybe over-answered the subject matter. But it's important because there's misunderstanding, abundant misunderstanding out there. And so that we can know we're not just sentimentally closing our eyes and blindly following something. Let us have a clear understanding of what that something is, so that it will nourish faith, and we can go forward with conviction, even we hear some opposing view, because we'll hear opposing view. Any comments or questions? Yes.
I'll ask some clarification questions on this topic.
Okay.
So the first question was, you mentioned about the Surya Namaskar that they do in yoga.
Yeah.
So is the understanding that also is actually an obeisances to the Supreme Lord?
Well, it is connected to, yes, it's connected to Gayatri, which is worship of the Supreme Lord. So one may face, just like you chant Gayatri, if there are those that follow the rules, you chant Gayatri in the morning facing east, in the direction of the rising of the sun. You're greeting the sun. But are we worshipping the sun when we face east and chant Gayatri? It's Surya Narayan. That pronoun tat, very important word in the Vedas, it's a pronoun, that. Well, what's that? That's the absolute truth. Savatur Vrenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. The same as Surya Namaskar. You know, that's not taught in yoga classes. They just, do the flex. Make your body fit and strong and supple. But that's where it comes from. The Patanjali yoga system is meant for that purpose. Just as Prabhupada is saying, Hatha yoga or Ashtanga yoga is meant for that purpose. Connecting with the personality. Yoga with whom? Not the sun. Ultimately.
The second question I had was this thing of Gayatri Mantra. When I'm reading this, even the description that so it's referring to Surya Narayana. So I'm trying to understand that how we hear that the direct names of God, like how we worship through Govinda or even Hare Krishna Mahamantra, we are referring to the direct names of the Supreme. So the Gayatri then seems to be an indirect.
Well, it's the word is tat. Like Om Tat Sat. You can say it's indirect. But what's tat? That's the purpose of the Vedas. It's Vedanta is searching for tat. What's tat? Well, that from which everything comes. Janmadhyasya yataha. That's the Bhagavatam starts. Janmadhyasya yataha. What's that? The Bhagavatam explains the personality of Godhead. So it's indirect. It's a pronoun. So one has to have some acumen. So to have that, you need guidance. But the Vedas provide, it's a desire tree. Some people want this. Some people want that. Some people want the other thing. So it's a pronoun. It's fulfilling the desires of everyone. That the complaint of Narada is, okay, you fulfilled the desires for those that have fruitive activity, but they already have propensity for fruitive activity. You haven't sufficiently made tat clear. So write one literature that just does that. So it's indirect. And it's puzzling. And as a result, people interpret it this way, that way, the other way. And therefore you get this, polytheism. Many, many, many. And if you're an impersonalist, you say it doesn't matter. Some like this, some like that, because it all leads to impersonal. That's what's behind everything. And others say something different, and others say something different. Subject to all kinds of interpretation because it's indirect.
So like in Harinam Chintamani, when Haridas Thakur describes the three categories of Nama, where he says that so these are direct names of the God and then these are indirect, and he recommends.
Well, there's primary and secondary, not direct and indirect. Primary indicates his relationships. Secondary indicates his position.
So in our practices, like I'm just trying to understand, like on one side we are hearing that this is the mother of all the mantras.
Yes.
And then.
So what does it mean?
Yeah, and it's like I feel in Harinam Chintamani it seems like the glorification is more toward the direct names, and then this is.
Well, you're using the word direct.
Sorry.
I'm using the word primary and secondary because that's what I read in the translation. So, sufficient, chant Hare Krishna. To the purification that comes from chanting Hare Krishna, one may receive Gayatri Mantra under proper guidance, then we know what that means. And there's not only this Brahma Gayatri, but other Gayatris, in addition to Brahma Gayatri. Let's take Brahma Samhita. It's not that there's only one subject matter, Govinda. Because mention is so many controlling personalities, but they're connected to Govinda. So in one sense, there's only one topic, Govinda. But there's many topics, all of which are connected to Govinda. The same the Bhagavatam. There's 10 subject matters. Jiva Goswami elaborately discusses the 9 are just illuminations and elucidations of the one. the 10th, ashraya. It drills down and drills down and drills down on that one. So it's one. The subject matter of the Bhagavatam is one, but it's so many things. And when it comes to mantras, it's very terse or sutra-like. It says, very packed up. So tat, Om Tat Sat. What's that? Well, different people interpret it different ways. And therefore it's difficult in the age of Kali to understand the essence and the conclusion. Therefore the Bhagavatam asks, what's the essence and conclusion of all the Vedas? And it's revealed very clearly, very directly. So we're so fortunate. We're given the direct meaning from the disciplic succession, and lots of people haven't. So we have some important responsibility to give that, at least give the opportunity to other people to hear disciplic succession's message. I mean, we could just be salvationists and interested in our own bhajan, but we're ghosty and undies. We give to others because it's pleasing to the personality of Godhead. Good for us and good for them at the same time, like Bhakti Siddhanta said. Okay? Yes?
Maharaj, we learned that if one is absorbed in devotion, we can be protected from everything. And then you gave the contrast where if we're not absorbed, then we can go on a roller coaster, right?
Yeah.
So,
Right.
Being absorbed, I'm trying to understand how do we not fall into the misconception that being absorbed means, fulfilling our passionate, the mode of passionate, where it means that we're always constantly running around or actively engaged. It's something you've mentioned before to me, particularly where, as opposed to studying Shastra, study of Shastra, and trying to act in the mode of passion. And I'm always thinking that, always doing things like...
Me too. But it's not engaging in the mode of passion, it's engaging our propensities in service to Krishna. I've been planning to do this for someone else, so I'll do it for you and this someone else. You can circulate to others if you like. Just cut and paste the commentary from Brahma Samhita text 61. Because your concern is Brahma's concern. He doesn't say it, but after all those beautiful prayers, the Govinda prayers, the next 5-6 verses, and that's the whole of Brahma Samhita, Lord Krishna is instructing Brahma what to do about what you just said. Because I just had all this wonderful realization, and now I've got to go to create a universe? I'm going to forget all that stuff. But if I don't do my duty, then I'll incur sin for not doing my duty. So what should I do? Because I have this nature, I have this Shrishti, Shakti, empowerment. I gotta create, run around and do stuff. So those 5 verses give the answer to that question and concern, but the essence of it is in text 61, which says, when you join the primary activity of bhakti with these duties, then these duties, which means your psychophysical nature, those duties are as purifying to you as the primary activities of bhakti. It explains it. In Bhakti Siddhanta style. There's different kinds of duties. There's civic duties, there's your own body and mind duties, etc. It gives categories of duties. Do all those things as duties, exactly as is said here. You're involved in matter. So you have some duties. Do them as duties, not with attachment to being the enjoyer of what's produced from those duties. Do them in the spirit of offering of devotion to the Supreme, while simultaneously inwardly cultivating your relationship with Krishna, your dedication of self, body, mind, and words unto Krishna. It's said in really simple language in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, perform the prescribed duty and always think of me. It's not a trick. It's the same thing as what's here. Same thing as what's in text 61. Just explained very nicely. Those activities that, go around and do stuff, activities, are as purifying as the primary activities of bhakti. Don't be negligent in the primary activities of bhakti. And don't be negligent in performing prescribed duty, whether you're Lord Brahma or Uma Dasi. You perform your prescribed duties in the consciousness of making some offering, and it's purifying to the mind and senses, and the influence of the modes of nature is diminished while you're doing stuff, because you're under the care of the internal potency. Now, it's not a small thing. Don't be forgetful of the personality of Godhead when you're going around doing stuff. Not a secular teaching. You do your sadhana and then you do your worldly stuff. That's our religion. No, it's not a secular religion. This is for God and this is for my worldly duty. It's not secular. Clear?
Mm-hmm. When I was, it's clear, but when I'm thinking about those running around things, I wasn't, referring particularly to like worldly duties. I'm referring to running around from
doing this
one
program, that program
to the other, or like one.
Same. It may match your the passion that's there embedded in your material nature, your body and your mind. It may match that. Offer that to Krishna. So, offer that to Krishna. And you could say, no, I don't want to offer it to Krishna, I just want to suppress it. It's not going to work. It elevates that going from this program, that program, and organizing events and activities and having kirtan and distributing books and having festivals and worshipping deities and doing all the devotional activity that we do. Make sure that you do that with the mindfulness that this is meant for Krishna's pleasure. I mean, Prabhupada, look how active Prabhupada was. Was his transcendence compromised? No way. So, is that a legitimate path? It's not only a legitimate path, it's the preferred path. We each have different natures. So you engage according to your nature. That's, you're situated in your constitutional position, exactly what it said in yesterday's verse. Where the worry should go is not, is this the mode of passion? Where the worry should go is, am I being sufficiently attentive to my core devotional activities? Is that rich and strong? And then, am I carrying that consciousness with me into these other activities? So, while you're in the kirtan at the program, it's the safest place. But to have the program, then these devotees have to do the cooking, and they have to do the cleaning, and arranging, and notifying, and thising and thatting. Their hosts they're a little bit stretched while we're here doing all this stuff. fortunately, it's going to be over soon, and it gets back to normal again. But it's not, a wave of the mode of passion comes in and takes us over, if we're mindful of the purpose of this.
Okay.
And then sometimes it's this, and sometimes it's that. We don't need to be in a constant marathon. And that's Krishna consciousness. We don't need to avoid the marathon. We need to be Krishna conscious and be measured in what we do according to our capacity and our nature. But always remember Krishna. Prabhupada was so busy. And seamlessly he moved from one thing to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. Because he was always Krishna conscious. That's the goal. See what our nature is. According to our nature, we engage in Krishna consciousness under proper guidance. Yeah.
I had one. Actually, my concern, especially since yesterday you gave the answer, explaining next 50 years, it's very important that we study, actually.
Yeah.
So, my concern is like in doing all these things, that studying part gets a bit...
Yeah, so don't neglect it.
Yeah.
It may end up that you and your peers do less running around and arranging programs and stuff like that, and more time where you're in a systematic, organized way doing study. So that, the fulcrum may move a little bit over that way. But that's okay. Prioritize, provide adequate time for that. Understanding is necessity. One of the things that I've found, and in discussion with others, I've seen, as you become more Krishna conscious, Krishna gives you more ability to do things more effectively and efficiently. Say it the opposite. Less Krishna consciousness means it takes me much longer and I'm much less effective doing anything. So as a member of ISKCON, which means a follower of our founder Acharya, whatever generation that may be, I wish to fulfill his mission. And so the ISKCON 100 mission requires I do this. So I make sure I'm going to do this. Not just today or tomorrow, but ongoing for years. I'm going to invest more over here. That means that I'll have to do some less over there. But as I become more Krishna conscious, my capacity will increase. Your follow-up question?
Just a term that we were hearing, Surya Dvarana, again and again in the class. You once mentioned in the class that also refers to association of devotees or saintly personality.
I also mentioned
The term Surya Dvarana can also mean association of saintly personality. Or maybe I'm just clarifying is that.
well, we can access the personality of Godhead through the association of saintly devotees. We must not neglect that association in pursuit of, perfection of life. Is that?
Yeah, and I may have misheard it. I'm just clarifying that has a connection with the term.
Of course. The connection is we can access descending mercy of Krishna through those who are distributing the descending mercy of Krishna. That's Krishna's plan. It's his arrangement. You want my mercy? Here's the distributors of my mercy. Ignore the distributors of my mercy and think that you're my devotee? Getting my mercy? No. That's that quote from Adi Purana. Okay? That's the connection. Yes?
Marge, you were talking about
like atheistic views and how they're like taught in schools and
Yes.
all of that.
Yeah.
So my question was, can you explain further like evolution and Darwin's theory? And
Oh, it's a short subject. I sent a file to him yesterday that has a text written by, not by me, but by somebody that has assiduously studied this topic, and it's like his language, it's not mine. And then there's some reading material. So make a summer project and read some of that, and you can get the file from him. And anybody else that wants that, get the file from him. Reading material, summer project. And it's, it's a Vedic the reading material is Vedic perspective, or Hare Krishna followers of our founder Acharya perspective on the spiritual scientific view on these topics. In short, there's two kinds of evolution that we acknowledge, and we don't acknowledge chemical evolution, that matter combines together to make spirit or life. We don't accept that. What we do accept is there's evolution of consciousness. As karma is diminished by being in a lower life form, lighter karma results in more elevated consciousness, and correspondingly another life form, another life form, another life form, up to the human form. So evolution of consciousness, evolution of species based upon karma, or the covered state becoming less covered by, like the prison sentence of getting a lower life form and living through it. So there's evolution of consciousness, and there's microevolution. Microevolution meaning adaptation according to circumstances. Like bacteria, this is the classic from those that have to teach microbiology in grad school. Bacteria can develop antibodies and become immune to an antiseptic. You can demonstrate it. So there's microevolution, or species develop, selection of the species, which Darwin says is true. There's varieties produced from parents of things. Let's say the shape of a beak of a bird for eating this kind of food or that kind of food, and over a period of time, this kind of beak survives because it can have some food, and others that don't have that kind of beak don't survive because they don't have food. So there's microevolution, but not chemical evolution. And there's evolution of consciousness, but not chemical evolution. Life doesn't come from matter. And there's an assumption in evolution, as it's taught in school, life comes from matter. Chemical evolution. That's what we, ardently, strongly disagree with. Now, you may to pass your exam, you may have to say this is what it says, but in the parallel intelligence is that's not right. And if you say that's not right in your exam, you get an F. You have to say to get the A. But your own class, at least depends upon the teacher. You may be able. They may permit. There's a dissenting voice over here. I understand what that one says, but anyway. Well, that's your religious view and has no place in the science classroom, so be quiet. Or something like that. Yes, last question.
Guru Maharaj, my question was related to the Gayatri Mantra. In India, every household they recite this mantra not understanding the potency and not getting in the disciplic succession.
Sure.
So how does that work?
It doesn't work. I mean, the potency is not experience. There's faith. So there's some benefit because there's faith in the Vedas, but it's not done properly. And you could take it a little bit further, extreme, and say it's offensive. It is not meant to be done that way, and the conception is wrong. Whether it be softer and say, there's some faith in the Vedas, and so there's some benefit. And it depends on the person whether that person can move from that position or not. Sometimes it's just give them prasadam. And sometimes it's, other things. But it's like it's said, it's more difficult to teach a person a musical instrument that doesn't know that thinks they already know how to play the musical instrument than someone that doesn't know how to play the musical instruments, because you have to untrain bad habits. It's more difficult to train somebody that thinks they know than somebody that knows they don't know. Okay? Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Krishna Krishna.